Nice to meet you yesterday.
Yeah. I like your purple sweater.
Go get the white sauce.
Yeah, there was like a final exam for
Study.
Yep, just like a fly.
What did you get?
A roast beef.
Really? I got a beef roast yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm really upset that I didn't see you yesterday.
It's at our party too.
Yeah. Huh?
Next year.
All year.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Call this meeting to order of the 19th session of the Associated Students of Madison. It is 4:18 p.m. on May 6th. We're in the 4th floor of the Student Activities Center in the hearing room. Chair Belowski is presiding. We'll now have Secretary Kumro call roll.
Akers. Here. Avenue. Here. Belowski.
Here.
Crandall. Gardner.
Here.
Giannopoulos. Present. Hamilton. Higgins. Jarrett. Kidd.
Here.
Kumro. Also here. Lorraine.
Here.
Magdion.
Here.
Meyer. McNally. Moss.
Here.
Nyvart. Present. Bragg.
Here.
Rollin.
Here.
Saez. Statter.
Here.
Uzeta. Walter. Walters.
Here.
Wheeler. Here. Wickbander. Here.
Okay. Seeing quorum, we'll now move to announcements. So any announcements? Any announcements? Okay. We'll move right to swearing in of new representatives. So Jeremy and Chris, I believe, the only ones that are here. Chris, again, please rise. Raise your right hand and just repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jeremy Levenger,
Affirm to faithfully support. Affirm to faithfully support. The Constitution and bylaws of the Associated Students of Madison. And to faithfully discharge my duties as a member of the ASM Student Council to the best of my abilities. I also affirm to make decisions concerning the funding of student organizations other than the ASM in a viewpoint neutral manner, as required by law, the ASM Constitution, and the ASM bylaws. Finally, I affirm that I will maintain the highest standards as a representative of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and will strive to fulfill the student body's expectations of my office. Congratulations, you're sworn in. Okay. Moving right along, we are in open forum. Once again, each speaker may speak once for the 3 minutes. The open forum is limited to 45 minutes unless the panel shall by 2/3 vote to extend it. And we start with Chair Emeritus Allie Gardner. Allie, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. Hi everyone, my name is Allie, and I'm currently serving on the Board of Directors for Student Council, and I think this is also your first meeting, but I don't think I have to meet all of you yet. Something that I wanted to talk to you about is the Special Legislative Task Force on Restructuring and Operational Flexibility. It's something that Representative Gator has been working a lot on, that I've been engaged with this year and hope to be engaged with more. But the reason why I'm coming to talk to you about it is because they're hearing this on Wednesday.
questions for Ally Gardner? Representative Nybar?
From your experience being in that room, can you kind of speak to the role that students have played in process and also that how the focus on students is actually there or
Yeah, definitely. I think the most troubling things I've heard are anecdotes that I'm hearing regents, chancellors, and legislators give about how lazy students are. One comment was actually that we abuse food stamps and don't take jobs and abuse financial aid so that we can live in fancy apartments and that tuition can increase and it doesn't really affect us. So that was probably the worst area that I can talk about. Though I do think after a lot of pressure that they received from students, and particularly the student council last session, along with other ASM committees, pressured them to allow students to present because they weren't including students. And even though we asked them to turn them into include students on the task force, they wouldn't do that either. So after a lot of pressure and after a lot of phone calls and emails with people on the task force and with the assistant president, they finally said, okay, fine, like, we can make recommendations. And soon afterwards, faculty and staff asked for the same thing. So students certainly have a need in terms of shared governance role in this committee, which I think is really important. But I think it should be stated that the majority of these people are not higher education experts at all, and have not had experience working for the university aside from the chancellors. So I think it's really important that any higher education representatives, whether it's shared governance, students, faculty, or staff, be there in some capacity. But really, I think they're very confused about the student experience now in this modern day. So when they're much older, they come from a generation who's work part-time and work through the summer in order to pay for school, and they're just not in that situation anymore. Students have to work about 70 hours a week now to pay off the average cost of college. That's just not normal, and to them, they don't understand that. So they use talking to.
You have a follow-up? Chair Kidd?
What, sorry, I didn't catch what title was someone saying, where that came from, that was.
So it's in room 412, East in the Capitol, and I'm going to be here around 8:30 in the morning. If people are going to walk over, I'm just going to kind of stop by and see if anybody's still sitting there. So if you want to get up, that's cool. And it starts at 9 a.m. The presentation itself is always going to start right at 9 a.m. So that's when students are meeting right away, and I think it followed by staff faculty and staff faculty. So it should be from about 9 to 12, but if you can only be there for the beginning part or either the latter part, I recommend either getting there early so you can talk to some of them, or getting there at a little bit later time so we can talk to them when it's wrapping up. But they might take a break in between. I don't know if they've done that, but they can do that too. So if you're able to make it during any of that time.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Other further questions for the speaker? Representative Rowland?
How are you feeling not being chair anymore?
Really excellent. I feel like I get to work on only the stuff that I care about all the time, not necessarily some of the administrative or internal things, which is really, really nice. I'm also really weirded out by the amount of time that I have to do things for myself and learning how to be a student here.
Do you have a follow-up? Other further questions for the speaker? Thank you, Ally.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have Chair Crandall. You have 3 minutes to begin.
Alright guys, so forgive me for being a little tired. I just finished the triathlon this morning, which is really exciting. But I'm also sort of sad because it's the last time this triathlon will ever be offered to UW students because it is being cut next year. As well as all of other physical education programs. Students have talked about this that they don't want to be cut. However, some individuals or people in the university don't seem to take that into account. So that's something I'd like to bring up. The other thing I'd like to bring up is something later on which I didn't want to share with you. And it's just one little thing I want to say. We can talk about this later. But in talking with Whisberg, I've heard that Whisberg has something called the New Voters Project, which basically essentially does the turbo vote service, and it's a better service. And I can go into that in more detail from something that Matt sent me later, but I'd just like to bring that up to you guys. I think this is a rush thing. I think the timeline for this is extremely inconvenient to the 19th session and when it's coming out to us. And I think that should concern people, rightfully so, because you need a timeline to be able to evaluate services that we provide students. I'm not saying the service is bad, I'm just saying that the process needs to be looked at. So, thank you for that.
Do you have yourself any questions?
Sure.
Other questions of the speaker? Representative Whitbrander?
Which one is that?
I guess you can let the department.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I don't want
have a comment question?
Thank you.
Other further questions of the speaker? Chair Statter?
Do you know if it's gone to the University Academic Planning Council yet? I assume it's sort of been, but it has, but.
They don't think they went to the specific one.
Okay.
Did you follow up?
In regards to the whisper voting service, you could just explain how familiar you are with the service, and if you think that if you're supportive of it, if you think it would be available to students for this first round of voting in June, the special election.
From what I understand, it already is provided to students, and it's funded through grant money to offset the costs. Also, it's not a flat fee like turbo service, so it's the students that partake of it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just a flat fee for everyone involved. Also, I think it stores information about those who registered, allows ASM and vote coalitions to customize vote reminders, phone banks, and emails, email materials to those registered. However, TurboVote wouldn't provide that list to ASM, whereas this does. So.
Do you have a final question? Other further questions for the speaker? See none? Thank you, Rob. Next up, we have Chief Justice Fifield. You have 3 minutes to begin.
Hi, everyone. So the 19th session is the 4th session of ASM, during which I have sat on the student judiciary. And this student council is the 3rd student council that I have addressed as Chief Justice. And this meeting of the student council will be my last. So I wanted to take some time to say goodbye to all of you, congratulate you on the good work that you've done and the good work that you will do in the future, and reflect a little bit on my time here and talk a little bit about the future. This is really kind of an odd experience for me because when the 18th session ended, there's this big climactic moment where everyone's like, oh, goodbye. Dan Koska gets up and makes this big speech about being done, and everybody's going through this at the same time. But all of you are probably thinking, God, I just want to get out of my work and hear this chick is being all sentimental. So I'll try to keep this little speech entertaining and thoughtful and applicable to all of you. One thing that I want to say is that the #1 lesson that I have learned doing this job is that, and a lot of you I'm sure will disagree with me, that respect, not loyalty, is the greatest currency in governance and in life. And ASM over the past couple of years has kind of operated on like this caucus power system, so that you have the power if you're in the most powerful caucus. And I have to disagree. The people that I have seen as the most powerful and respectful representatives of this body have been the ones that stood up to their caucus and voted or spoke on what they believe in, kind of irrespective of what their friends thought. And more importantly than that, the people that I have respected more are the people who respect their friends and allow them to make choices that aren't necessarily consistent with their caucus based on what they believe in. This is a small enough body where party politics shouldn't be an issue, where you should be able to sit down for a few hours and hash out ideas and choose something based on its merits, not based on who proposed it, not based on who's backing it, not based on who will benefit. Well, in some ways, yes, who will benefit, but my perspective is unique because I don't have a really imperative role in this body. So I hope that you guys really kind of reflect on why you're here, who you serve, and what your true purpose is, and to always look for the good in people rather than search for the negative. And I'd like to open up myself for questions about what you want, what I think about different things that have happened during my term.
I'm sorry, the speaker time expired.
Motion to extend by 3 minutes.
Motion to extend by 3 minutes. Is there a second? All in favor of extending the speaker's time, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I apologize, you can continue.
That's okay, I'm pretty much done. I just wanted to end on to say that it's been a pleasure to serve you.
Other questions to the speaker? Chair Kidd.
Talk about respect, and how do you think is the best way to build that given our community?
Really, I think that all of you know that the most productive conversations that you have are the ones one-on-one that you share with each other. And that you have these really great moments and you talk about what you want and you're like, yes, we have so much in common. We want all of these different wonderful things for students on this campus. And then you step in this room and it's like all of a sudden that breaks down. And whatever you thought was going to be the productive aspect of that conversation is just gone. So I think that maintaining respect within bodies of ASM is about remembering the spirit of those one-on-one conversations and bringing that into this room. Looking for the good in people, looking for what you have in common, not what makes you different, not what separates you. And it sounds cheesy, but it's really the truth. So you need to sit down at this table and remember that maybe not everyone at this table is your friend, but they are your colleague. And you do owe them your respect, and that means not making silly facial expressions, and not scoffing, not using profanity, not doing the students on this campus a disservice by treating this room like a toxic environment. Make it a place that you look forward to come to, do good work.
Do a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Are there further questions to the speaker? See none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up. Next up, we have Vice Chair Giannopoulos.
Okay. I am actually going to read an email sent by one of our representative-elects who could not be here. And there you go. Hello, everyone. As you may know, my name is Jonas, and I am the representative-elect for the School of Business. While I would have preferred to deliver this message to you all personally today, I will be unable to do so due to prior job-related commitments. In any case, I would like to formally announce my interest in being nominated to the Finance Committee. Aside from the obvious correlation between my major, which is finance for those of you who don't know, and the committee, I am very interested in joining the Finance Committee because I am very passionate about ensuring that student safeties are efficiently and equivocally allocated to RSOs. The RSOs we have on this campus help shape our campus climate and are a large part of our constituents' lives. So those who serve on Finance Committee have an obligation to our student body to make sure that they approve budgets for RSOs that are adequate enough to ensure maximum effectiveness from the RSOs, and not so excessive that it is wasteful. Being in the business school, I have taken accounting, finance, and operations courses, which I believe will prove valuable in terms of efficiency and critically evaluating budgets. Additionally, while I'm new to ASM, my experiences in working in investment banking over the summer, where I've often worked 80 to 100 hours a week, had met multiple deadlines within the same day, and have cultivated my transferable skill set, including organization, ability to prioritize, and works in teams for a common goal. Furthermore, being a Posse scholar, I have been trained extensively on the issues of cross-cultural communication, diversity, and prevalent social justice issues, which I feel will make me only more able to work with the people on council of all different backgrounds and beliefs. More so than my technical skills and experiences, I feel that one of my strongest qualities is the fact that I am unafraid to ask for help. I am clamorous to learn. Specifically, if appointed, I will ensure that I request and receive trainings on budgeting and evaluation from ASM staff or other parties or council members to supplement my academic coursework. Similarly, I hope that you will agree that the combination of my passion and efficient and equitable allocation of RSOs to my work experiences, academic background, and my willingness to seek out more learning opportunities make me a strong candidate for this committee. Thank you for all of your time, Jonas. So this is from one of our representatives-elect, so I would urge all of you to consider postponing the finance elections until he is present.
Would you open yourself up for questions?
Sure.
Are there any questions to the speaker? Sure. Representative Brack.
Sorry, is it possible to nominate him and have that nominee is accepted?
I'll take the point of information. Unfortunately, no, it's not. Yeah. But luckily for him, finance will not be meeting over the summer, so he will have plenty of time to serve in the community get ready. I guess you do a follow-up.
No.
Further questions to the speaker? See none. Thank you. And on to our last speaker. We have Representative Navarro. You have 3 minutes as soon as you begin.
So I was going to speak to you during the debate last meeting, but I had to leave to go to Halal, but I'm kind of just going to give my 2 cents on the 2 pieces of legislation that you all approved last meeting, and they're both up for another vote today. One of them is, well, so kind of a background on me. I was the 18th session SSC chair, and in my role as SSC chair, it was my duty to take everything that my committee passed and represent it regardless of my feelings for that legislation. 2 pieces of legislation that my committee passed were the event bylaw change legislation and the policy violations. I truly believe that SSC took time to thoroughly go over the pros and cons of all these pieces of legislation, and I'm really happy that some members asked Chair Walensky to put on the agenda because I just really wanted to represent the interests of the 18th session SSC. However, with that, I have to also voice my dissent. On the event bylaw change, I do have an issue with it. As many of you know, the GSSF the groups in the GSSF are very different than the groups that are other registered student organizations. GSSF is supposed to cater to students that are outside of the organization and provide direct services to those students. However, students that are involved in registered student organizations are usually incorporated with students who are really interested in the same things and really want to do things internally and work together for their own benefit. If there's a program every week on the same day, you're going to more likely than not get the same people every week. And that's great, and I think that GSS has that priority to, a prerogative to fund those events, to be able to provide for people within the organization, also give people an availability where outside the organization to attend. However, I do not believe that is in the same spirit of what the direct service model was made for. The direct service model was to get the average student walking down the halls to be able to go into an office and say, I want this service, and when can you give it to me on my time? And I think that's really important. I think that if a group schedules an event on their direct services on their own time, that's great, and I'm glad that they're also accommodating people within the organization. But I do not think that's in the same spirit of the direct service model. So that's why I will be voting this piece of legislation. Policy violation legislation. Let me extend.
Motion to extend by 3 minutes.
The motion is extended by 3 minutes. Is there a second? All in favor of extending the speaker's time by 3 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'll go over this. The next one is the policy violation legislation. I think it was really important for SSC to actually pick up this legislation. People have criticized that the current bylaws have stand as draconian, and they also do not delineate between different policy violations. However, there's a point in this legislation that I'm going to be moving to amend. It is the point that is going to be saying about offering a hearing for a student that is within a GSSF that they had an intentional policy violation on themselves versus a group as a whole. And this has been a philosophical conversation that I've had with past SSC chairs, is that when you're in an organization, at what point does your individual identity or your individual student status get removed and you become part of the collective? And so if a member who is an employee of a GSSF group or somebody who's there actively furthering the mission, a member, that's what the definition is, how do you separate that from the rest of the group? And so if an individual on themselves has an intentional policy violation, how can you not say that was in the same kind of spirit of the rest of the group, regardless if that's one individual? And so that is why I'm going to move to amend the difference between an individual found with a policy violation of the group, because individuals make up the group. And there's no point where you can actually distinguish between an individual versus a group member. And then the last thing I wanted to speak about, well actually the second last thing is the turbo vote. I think this is a really great project. However, I think that there's a lot of issues at this point that haven't been dealt out. The funding of it, how can we ensure that students are actually going to opt in for it? And so if this council majority of students on this campus responding that they're interested in having the service, I think we should move forward in the next session to provide the service to students. If we also did the King's South between the Lewisburg and the Madison Student Growth Coalition, because it's $26,000. Unless a student opts in, and they can't be provided the service, and that's always an issue. Is that when we actually engage students on this campus and ensure they're actually taking advantage of all the opportunities that are presented to them. And the last thing I want to speak to you about is that I'm resigning from Student Council after this meeting. It's been fun being a representative of students with you all, and if you have questions for me, I'm going to yield to Chair Pulaski why I'm going to be resigning. But with that, I'll open myself up for questions.
Representative Vines.
Wait, hold on. He has not been sworn in by SSC yet.
Okay, would people have a problem yielding to David Vines to speak and ask a question? Hearing none?
Yeah, just a clarifying question. So, in your idea, are you saying you should avoid that your amendment will be to eliminate differentiating between individual and group policy violations entirely?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Clarification.
I think about the legislation as a whole is great, and I'm fully in favor of everything else except that delineation.
You have a follow-up? No. Further questions for the speaker? Yes. Representative Hamilton?
Yeah. If it was on the student's time, it wouldn't be considered an event, so I would consider it a courtesy.
Do you have a follow-up? Yes. Further questions for the speaker? Representative Gardner?
Yeah. Please don't answer this question if it's for personal reasons, but I just am curious as to the reason for your resigning. Was something that this body is going to prove on, or is something that is directly correlated to that? I don't know. You asked me to yield.
No, actually, I'll answer the first part of the question, and then I'm going to yield to the Chair Pulaski. I've sat on this body since 17th session, and what I'm going to kind of sentimental, but I think it's really important, regardless of your views on any issue, to ensure that every opinion is brought to this body. And I don't care if you agree with it or not. It's your job to find different opinions and bring it to this body and have that debate. And that's why when I object upon the question, I think it's really important for somebody at least to justify to every student on this campus why you're voting the way you are. I think I've done that for at least 2 years now, and I think it's really important for other people to have that opportunity. I'm continually growing in this organization, and I think I've learned a lot about myself, my abilities, and also the strength of others, and how I can actually even grow more as an individual through this organization. I'm going to stay involved. But there is a very specific reason why I'm resigning, and I don't know if Chair Pulaski would be willing to.
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to that. So I am appointing Representative Nyberg as my chief of staff for 19th session, and with the current job description, you are not allowed to be on council and be the chief of staff. So that's why.
And I think that'll be a very different role than I've ever played in this organization, and I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to get to know each one of you and give you all the resources that I've learned, and to help you succeed in whatever you choose to do.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. Well, first, I do think that I understand that you'll take your voice and your power to that roles people of staff and do great things there as well. But this council is a voice, very strong, respectable voice. So just want to express that. But leading into my question, I'm just curious looking at the differentiation between individual and group, because I really am not totally sure how to approach this. Because the one scenario that I see is if there's an intentional violation that's taken place that no one else is aware of that's happening. And so the group as a whole isn't given a chance to sort of correct it as a group, which you expressed in your first part that you felt that does represent the group as a whole. How would you address concerns that if there's one member of this group forming without the other members being aware of it?
Yeah, and this is something I actually had to deal with in the beginning of my chairship on SMC, was that there was an individual who had been involved in a clear is that it's really the person's job in the organization, but when you're not working in that organization, you can be a student, you know? So it's that's what any violation of that SOC legislates upon is about.
Do you have a final question? Are there further questions to the speaker? Representative, you said that?
My question is so if the person committing the major violation is the authorized signer, then we should have to.
Yeah, so Anju would check it. And the thing is, it's really, the group is the people in the group are the ones that are putting that authorized signer and allowing them to go do the sign training and entrusting them to be the people who are going to sign it off in any financial matters. And so it's really up to members within that group to have trust in their authorized signer.
Do you have a follow-up? Further questions to the speaker? Representative Wickmander?
But if the authorized signer was the person who signs off, right? Is the person who makes a policy violation, then there isn't any bureaucracy between the GSSF group and you, right?
Wait, what do you mean between the GSF group and Anju? Okay, so this is a little complicated because we talk about violations and we talk about intentional violations and we talk about 4 or 5 violations. If there is an accident, and usually this happens with any group, and there's like it goes to the authorized signer sees there's 0.25 hours over the 20-hour limit, that's not intentional. But if it's intentional and it's the authorized signer doing it, it's them representing their group in their career capacity, and it's really unfortunate, but maybe that person shouldn't have been authorized signer.
Do you have a follow-up?
What bureaucratic measures are set up to hold that person accountable so that they do know that they're tested? Is that, because, right, if you say that it's a problem that happens all the time, you can make it a problem that happens all the time. But what if it happens with anyone they're penalized for it because they don't have what accountability measure is set up in the bureaucratic system that allows them to see that before they're penalized?
Well, the first one is just kind of a letter to SOC saying I'm sorry and recognize it happens. So whenever there's ever a violation, Anju notifies the SOC chair, and the SOC chair meets with the group member to discuss what happened. And usually, actually, 99.9% of the time, it's never malicious. And so the first time it's a letter, and it's kind of them just saying, we're sorry this happened. This is the acceptable case, it doesn't happen again. Right, and then the next time there's a fine, a very minuscule fine, like how much money was it that you logged over, and that's when the process allocated violations. And the third time there's potential for a higher fine or freezing of funds, and then the fourth time it's a 52-week freeze. That's how it currently stands. So there's a process in which that you kind of increasingly get more punishment for it. However, right now, how the new legislation is that they're not as general, and so they're really tailored to the specific violation. And it's also that you need to go through an authorized signer training again. If you're the authorized signer, to really understand what the rules are to make sure that you know it in the future.
Do you have a final question? Are there further questions to the speaker? Christina? Thank you, sir. David Vines, you're up. The 3 minutes soon to begin. I'm fine. Open forum ends at 5:05, so 11 minutes.
Folks, really quick, just wanted to come and thank you for going through with the process. I just want to speak again on behalf briefly of the 2 pieces of legislation that SSC is putting in front of you today, and let you know if you have any questions about them, I will be around if you want to give it to somebody who's in favor of them, especially the event definition. And I'd also just like to temporarily speak against the possible amendment of not distinguishing individual from group policy violations. I think in a lot of cases, it's better to, I honestly think it's better to leave the door open and leave each individual case at the discretion of SSFC or at SJ or whoever this goes to. And I think there are times where it is really an individual one that's not a group violation, and I do think it's something that should be looked at, because especially if you have an individual outgoing member who commits a policy violation, and we saw this kind of with CFAC a couple years ago. 2 years is a long time, and it really starts benefiting people who were, like juniors in high school when these violations first occurred. So I do think it's something we should look at. In response to some representatives concerned about whether or not SSC should be handling these violations in the first place, I do think we have the ability to make sure that are spent in a responsible manner. That being said, I do think that SJ honestly should have more oversight in the process because it will go to them eventually, and that's something that I'm going to be working on this year. But for the time being, I think this is at the very least a pretty good stopgap measure to make sure some of the more egregious draconian penalties are done away with. And yeah, so anyway, I'll be able to go pretty good.
Do you have yourself for questions? Are there questions to the speaker? See none? Thank you, David. Okay, there are no speakers left on the list for open forum, so is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing none, open forum is now closed. We're moving right along to adoption of the agenda. Are there any motions to amend or adopt? Vice Chair Giannopoulos?
Move to adopt.
Motion to adopt, is there a second? All in favor of adopting the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Reading and approval of minutes, any motions to amend or approve? Vice Chair Giannopoulos?
Move to approve.
The motion to approve the minutes, is there a second? All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Special orders, we have none. Introduction of new legislation, we have none. Old business one, we are on to the student judiciary bylaws, updates and improvements. And Chief Justice Fifield, you have the floor.
Okay, everybody who didn't hear the spiel on this last time, raise your hand. Okay, well then I'll give a brief version. So these are comprehensive edits to the student judiciary bylaws that I have been working on in some capacity for the last 3 years. They were approved unanimously by the student judiciary, and I think that fact should hold great weight in the consideration to approve them, because those are the people who are subject to this particular set of governing documents. Most of the changes are expansions upon existing parts. Also, a major reorganization took place to make them more logical and organized. The only, I think, significant change between what is already in the bylaws, it's not expansion, is the addition of a referenda procedure, which will make it easier for people who want to put referenda on the ASM ballot to get a consensus on what that language will look like with the student judiciary. So I think these are great changes. I think that they are necessary for the function of the student judiciary, and I urge you all to vote for them so that they can go in the bylaws. Thank you.
Okay. Because we voted on this and passed it last time, we're moving straight into debate. Are there points of debate? Representative Roll.
I call the question.
So I'm going to call the question. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing that, the question's been called. All in favor of passing the student judiciary bylaws, updates, and improvements, please raise your placard. All opposed? Congratulations, Chief Justice Fifield. That passes. Moving right along, election bylaws, updates, and improvements. Chief Justice Fifield, you won't see on the floor.
Okay, same sort of deal, but from section 6 and only a partial selection. This knocks out 3 sections of elections bylaws and replaces them with 2 new sections of very basically similar content that just specifies how certification and tabulation will be done by the SEC and student judiciary, and clears up what the process is for dealing with elections complaints and swearing people in following elections complaints. Again, I think they're necessary, urge you to pass them. Thank you.
Thank you. So once again, we're into debate. Any points of debate? Seeing none, the question's been called. All in favor of passing the election bylaws, updates, and improvements, please raise your placard. All opposed? That passes, thank you. Okay, old business number 3, event bylaw change. Representative Nybar, you have the floor, since Ellie representative.
And so I'll speak to it in my acting SSC chair capacity. So as many of you all know, the eligibility criteria is what SSC uses to evaluate JSS to see if they are eligible for funding within that forum. And SSC tries to make improvements to it this year, and the event bylaw change passed unanimously through SSC, and it was brought to Student Council. However, Student Council never took it up. So I'm sure Ellie spoke about it last on Friday, but I know that many members of SSC are in approval of this. And yeah, I can try to field some questions. I can't speak for her, but I can speak to what I would say that the debate kind of ensued, if anybody wants to ask.
Well, we're going to move to debate, but they can be brought up for sure. The points of debate. Representative Nygaard.
As I've stated in open forum, I'm going to be voting no on this, because I think it's contradictory to what the spirit of the direct service model is. That I'm not going, if people choose, vote for it, I'm not going to cause a big deal, to understand why people felt that this, was needed, because sometimes there is confusion. However, it's just against how I believe, direct services should be assessed. And also the kind of the delineation, because these groups are given between $40,000 and $200,000, and that's much bigger than any other RSO is. And so that's why we hold them to a different level as we do other student organizations.
Representative Rowan.
I agree with the previous speaker. I think she is the most educated when it comes to SSFC and what GSSF groups should be doing, and I think that we should respect her opinion. She is very, very good at what she does in the past year, and she was very viewpoint neutral. And I think that she knows what she's talking about when it comes to this legislation.
Chair Crandall.
I guess sitting on SFC and hearing members on SFC speak in support of this, I'm also in support of this. I disagree with the previous speakers. I think that this body chooses the spirit of what the direct service model needs. And I think that in the spirit of the direct service model, this change would allow more direct services to be given by groups. And I think that being able to have it on this, being iterated over many days or different weeks is actually a plus, because it allows students to know about it and allows for it to be better given out to students. So I'm in favor of this, and SFC was in favor of it, so that's my 2 cents.
Representative Wickbanner.
I'm going to echo what the previous speaker said, that we can help shape our policies into what we want to see them do, and say about it and how they reflect our organization. Which is why I'm in support of this, but I'm also want to echo what I said last time, and that I think that we should try and start cutting back the bylaws and figuring out how we can make changes in those, and just like to remind to say what we want them to. Because it's a really long one that people won't get much through.
Representative Wheeler.
I would just like to speak in support of this legislation, because despite my concerns that I expressed the last time we met about the difficulty in reading them in terms of the lack of clarity, I do think that this change should afford more opportunities for students to seek direct services, and I think in particular, I hope that this will make them more accessible in terms of timeline, because if you have a need and you walk in and say, I have a need, would you provide me with direct service, likely you're looking to schedule something further into the future, whereas I think part of what a direct service could be should be accessible right now. And so if through this change, student organizations will be better able to schedule and then advertise a service that they will be offering, then it should be accessible to a student more directly, actually. So I think that hopefully, if I understand correctly, I think that this legislation should do that, and so that's why I support it.
Representative Gardner. 1 second. On point.
Could the chair please say what a direct service is according to our?
I was not the SFC chair, however, I will yield to the acting SFC chair.
Yeah, so the direct service is a program that's not an individual event, series of events, publication, leadership development opportunity for group members. This has to be requestable, tailorable, and educational, and available to members regardless of their membership within the group. The membership definition is somebody who's an active agent and furthering the group's mission. However, a credit producing activity does not include internships.
Does that help?
Request for information.
On point.
Could you just clarify the final statement? I didn't hear the beginning.
Representative Nygaard.
So it cannot be a leadership development opportunity for group members, and it also cannot be a credit producing activity. However, internships that are given to groups are not included in that. However, then the conversation goes, is that person who's an intern a member or not? And then it has to be available regardless of membership.
Does that help?
I think so.
Representative Gardner.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with what speaker discussed as far as that this body has power to choose what we want a direct service to be. And I think it speaks a lot to me that this was passed, as I understand it, was passed unanimously at SSFC. So it speaks quite a bit to me that that body made this decision as far as what they want a direct service to look like. I do really want to hear more, if I could, though. I'm sorry if I can't get those rules for this, but just as far as where you see a contradiction in the direct service and what this legislation proposes, I don't totally understand it. I just would like to hear that. So I understand.
Yes, Representative Nygaard.
Just to kind of answer some of the concerns or questions that members had. So how SSC evaluates direct services is that it has to be 50% plus one focus time of the group. And so a direct service is everything I stated. However, let's say if a group member had scheduled every Wednesday we're providing this one service, it is educational, it can be requested, but it's every Wednesday. And that is considered an event because it is scheduled on the group's time but not the student's time. And that is the reason why I have these concerns, is that it's all really supposed to be about that average student. It's really not supposed to be about the person who's the head of the organization, who's scheduling it for people within their organization primarily. And I think it's great that people do schedule things. I think events are really important for the functioning of the group. And they bring a lot of students in. However, it's the whole idea of having a direct service model is the focus is external, not internal. And so it should really be upon the student rather than group. However, I think that keeping it as it is will not prevent that these events are scheduled every week. It just can't go into the overall count when SSC is assessing eligibility. So it's not going to affect the budgeting process. It's just going to affect about, is this group even eligible for this forum?
Chair Crandall.
So I guess just to sort of put this in sort of more of an example terms, I guess I see this as this clarification of the choice that we're making is that if I'm a student and I'm requesting something and I request it on an iterated series. So say I request it for every single Wednesday of a month. That's how I see myself applying this criteria in a sense. And then, so I guess that's just how I would see it applying this criteria.
Chair Statter?
In my opinion, this still allows for requestable, tailorable educational opportunities, and I feel like it's the opportunity for it's the group's responsibility to reach out to their members, and then they do so. I would see that scheduling an event that members are able to plan for that in the future as being beneficial for that group in order to offer direct service opportunities. That is opportunities that are scheduled for individuals when taking in individual preferences into a group dynamic. I will be supporting this legislation because of the fact that I just said that I think that this still allows for groups to reach out to their membership on an individual basis, or perhaps at one time, so that many individuals at one time can be consulted, and that scheduled events that still match the other criteria for direct service can be offered.
Representative Walters?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I also respect my wife's opinion, and I was acting as chair. I think it's nice that you can refer to the larger group. And also, to some extent, also in the spirit of giving the incoming chair the tools that Worker came to us, that sort of under the guise of being the next chair or not being the chair, being part of it, so giving the tools to maybe operate the way that they can be, that they should operate. I think also to the larger sort of philosophical point, my belief is that GSSF and all of our funding should be in the spirit of education, in the spirit of enabling and allowing leadership opportunities and opportunities to participate, opportunities to become better citizens, better public servants, fill in the blank. I'm actually agnostic now on whether the direct service model is the best way to do that. But I think that I guess that's sort of beside the point. Generally speaking, I think I like this change because it tends to err on the side of allowing more participation and trusting GSSF groups to do the right thing. I think a lot of the examples that I hear are things like they're going to hold office hours and then fact that most of us on campus are interested in doing the right thing, are interested in, and then there's lots of places in the budget, lots of other places, and the policy violations that we'll talk about in a second. There's lots of ways to protect against that. So to me, I'm philosophically on the side of making this more accessible and available. I would even like to explore in the future whether a wider change to simplify this process would be better, but this is a step in the direction.
Representative Rowland.
I'm just worried this is going to cause a slippery slope aspect. That if we start saying a series of events are allowed, then events will be allowed, and then other things will be allowed that would be considered direct services, and then we get to a point where everything the group does is considered a direct service, even though in our definition as we have today, it wouldn't be a direct service. And I think that this could cause tremendous problems down the road in later sessions and bring us back to period before we have the direct service requirement where all these groups receive funding just based on popularity.
Vice Chair Giannopoulos.
Move to call the question.
So motion to call the question in a second. All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Question's been called. All in favor of passing old business 3, event bylaw change, please raise your placard. All opposed? By a vote of 16 to 3, that carries. Okay, we're on to old business 4, policy violations. And Representative Nyberg is on the floor.
I move to amend this legislation to cut out on the last page of the legislation lines 1 through 9.
Just put this in ready, please.
Yeah, I'll just
Okay, Sarah, now. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yep. I think that what I pretty much said in open forum is the same thing, is that it's really hard to distinguish between an individual's capacity within the group and like their identity within the group. And if you are going to be working for any organization group job, you also have to realize that you have you are furthering that mission, and you are having to take into consideration the collective responsibility of being within that persona, and any of the consequences that arrive, both positive and negative, are directly associated with that job. And I think it's really important to recognize that. And so with that, if you commit an intentional policy violation while you're working for a group, unfortunately, it should also reflect the capacity of the overall group.
Would you like to speak to your second?
Yeah, I was actually hoping that maybe we can make an amendment to the amendment to include 1 through 13. And the reason I can just say why, because I don't know why we would strike 1 through 9 and then not also strike through 1 to 13 as well. The reason why I'm in favor of striking any language with intentional policy violation is because I believe that SSFC has no business gauging intentionality. So that's why I do believe that this whole idea of intentional policy violations and needing to watch for it ought to be struck from this legislation.
Okay, I'm not going to consider that a motion because you were speaking to the second of the First Amendment, but someone who wants to make that obviously could. Representative Nyberg.
I just want to clarify that right now in the policy violations, it doesn't speak to any intentional policy violations. The only point that is even talking about intentional policy violations are in the eligibility criteria, which are not on the floor of debate right now. So with that, this is kind of inherently doing exactly what we try to fix with this legislation, is to make it very clearly delineated that if there's intentional policy violations happening, this is what's going to happen. And if we strike it, it's pretty much going to leave what we have right now in policy violations, that there's no mention of intentionality. And then when a group comes up for eligibility, then they see this criteria and they have committed an intentional policy violation and they're ineligible. And so with that, I would be against the previous speaker's intention of cutting all of that out, because it really doesn't even help groups even know that in an intentional policy violation, this is what happens.
Okay. Representative McMahon. Sarah, please.
Motion to amend the amendment to strike 1 through 13.
Okay. Can you email that, please, to the secretary?
How do I email nothing?
Can you just find it on your computer, like really backspace it? I don't know.
you strike it out with the strangle too.
Okay, that works. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Motion is second, would you speak to your motion?
Yeah, earlier, former SSSC member got up and talked about how SJ can have a bigger role in this process. And I think determining intentionality is something that, a body that regards itself as neutral and, makes decisions about, a neutral body that's supposed to make decisions on things like this, should be making that decision.
Would you like to speak to your second?
Yeah, actually, for the similar reasons stated, I don't believe that SSFC is a partial body, so I believe that this decision of intentionality should be placed in a neutral arbiter's hands, rather than the body that's had direct exposure and connection to it once, and it would be better fit to go into the people whose job it is to neutrally observe and uphold ASM processes.
Okay, we're on debate the amendment of the amendment, and yes, Representative Wheeler?
I just had a request for information.
Sure, on point.
When we need to debate the first motion to amend before hearing the second motion to
No,
amend?
but we're going to debate the amendment to the amendment, which is strictly lines 10 through 13. And after the question's called and decide on that, we'll move back into, well, I mean, if we pass it, 1 through 13. If we don't, 1 through 9. At which point we'll debate that. And once that's passed, we'll go on to the main motion and then pass that. So, does that help clear up a little bit?
Yes, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Representative Nyberg?
I'm going to go to David Vines.
Okay. Are there any objections to yielding to David Vines to speak? Hearing none? Let me speak.
Yeah, just in response to the amendment about striking everything, unfortunately that's not like what it would do. It would not totally take us as SFC out of determining intentional policy violations because it's still in our standing rules and that it's complicated and there are a lot more pieces of legislation that pertain to that. Again, I agree that I think this is something that I want to take up definitely next semester since again, these all go to SJ anyway, so might as well skip the middleman. But just that wouldn't effectively accomplish the desired goal of the speaker was making the motion.
Okay. Vice Chair Giannopoulos?
I call the motion on the amendment to the amendment.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to call the question on the amendment to the amendment. Just on point?
Are the standing rules adopted by, SSFC every year?
We yield to the SFC chair to specifically answer that.
Yes, but they are, usually the beginning of the session. However, just to kind of clarify something, it's not just in our standing rules that SFC has this duty, it's also in the bylaws. And it says it always would actually unless a decision is appealed.
Point of information,
On point?
is that germane?
I apologize, what?
Is that germane to the question I asked?
I would say that helped clear up any confusion for not only you, but everyone in the room, so yes. Okay, there's been a motion to call the question on the amendment to the amendment and a second. All in favor of doing so, please say aye. All in favor of calling the question on the amendment to the amendment, we're going to vote on lines 10 through 13. Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the question's been called. All in favor of striking lines 10 through 13, please raise your placard. All opposed? That fails. Okay, so we're back on the amendment, which is to strike lines 1 through 9. We're back to the debate. Representative Rowland.
Wasn't it 2 through 9, not, or 2 through 9, not 1 through 9?
I apologize, 2 through 9. Whichever line on the right starts on. Yeah, I apologize, yes. So, Representative Nyberg.
Call the question.
The motion to call the question? Is there a second to call the question? That motion fails for lack of a second. So I'm going to state, let me read. It's not, it's not in the out of order to call an objection, not to call a question. We goes to a vote automatically when there's a second, so there's no really need to do that. I promise I'll address it if people don't want to. Okay, so we're still debating then on this amendment. Chair Crandall.
Yeah, so I think this is a philosophy of collectivism versus individualism, and I think that this allows a member of SFC to make that distinction at which that level or between those two concepts exists. And I think that by taking away this part of the intentional violation, it not only harms the personification of the group, but it also does not allow the individual to be responsible for their actions, as well as it doesn't allow the growth of the individual if they are responsible for their actions or are not. And so I am completely not in favor of striking the difference between a group and individual because it harms individuals of the group.
Representative Wheeler?
I also support the original wording of the section, and I'm against this amendment. I completely recognize the difficulty in both determining intentionality and whether an individual was acting in the name of the group or not in their policy violation. But I also believe that the students who are making the decision are going to do their best to try and clearly distinguish that. And in particular, I think that if there's an individual who is intentionally acting to violate a policy, that it's important that there be this stipulation that they individually would no longer ever again in the future be able to be paid as a member of an ASM or like be on a payroll of ASM. Because that really does, as has been previously stated, support the importance of individual accountability. And so with that, I support the legislation as it is without the amendment.
Point.
Does not this legislation allow multiple individuals to have been found committing an intentional policy violation?
I will yield to the one of the co-authors.
Can you say that again?
Does not this legislation allow multiple individuals to be found committing the intentional policy violation?
It does, and I think that's going to be by case basis. Whenever this ever occurs, if an intentional policy violation is found, whoever are the people who are found doing so will have a hearing. And so it's going to see if that it was actually the spirit of the group, or if it was on the individual himself or herself going about it. So it could be as many individuals that were involved.
Does that help? Representative Walters.
I'm speaking against the amendment. I think that the power to differentiate between groups and individual strikes is sensible. I think the examples that have been used, for instance, the wage violation, I think that's one example, but knowing human nature the way they do, particularly with human nature of 19 to 20-year-olds, I can see certain circumstances in which an individual will try to summon a group and will find a way to do that. And I think it's important that we give SSC the power to prevent that from happening. I also think it's important to emphasize that we're not forcing SSC to accept an individual's responsibility. So if they determine that this person is being put up as a scapegoat for the group and for the group to avoid responsibility, I think that we're empowering SSC to make that determination. We're trusting them to do that. So, again, I think in the same spirit as I voted for the last piece of legislation, I vote against this.
Okay. Vice Chair Giannopoulos.
I move to call the question.
Motion to call the question. Is there a second? Second. All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the question. And usually the chair that carries the question has been called. On the amendment, yes. All in favor of passing the amendment, which is to strike lines 2 through 9 of the policy violation legislation, please raise your placard. All opposed? And the amendment fails. We're back on the main motion, which is policy violation legislation as a whole. Representative Nygaard.
Call the question.
Is the motion to call the question? Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. And usually the chair that passes. All in favor of the policy violation legislation, please raise your placard. All opposed? And by a vote of 14 to 3, that passes. Okay.
Wait.
On point.
Is it? So I just noticed this now, but eligibility is spelled wrong. And is that fixed?
I'm sure the rules committee chair would love to help clear that up beforehand. That'll be taken care of, I'm sure. Yes, that's fine. Okay, so we're on to old business 5, which is the terminal vote and the budget alteration for the voter registration service. Vice Chair Giannopoulos.
I move to postpone until we get further information about budgeting and such.
So is that a specific date?
Till the next meeting in summer.
So the first summer meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion? On point?
Can we discuss this legislation during the summer?
Yes.
Yes.
But can we do funding decisions for the summer?
No.
Only if it expends more than 10%.
It has to be less than 10% of the general budget, which would mean if you just something else. Yes and no, it's hard to say. We don't have a final number on that. So, it's been a motion to postpone until the first summer meeting, which I believe is June 16th. And a second, like to speak to your motion.
Oh, yeah, I still am uneasy about even talking about this just because we need more information on this, and I feel like postponing until the first summer meeting is proper time to get all of the information that is needed.
Request information.
One.
Has this been introduced? Or would it need to be introduced?
Well, I mean, it technically has been introduced since we discussed it last meeting, so yes. 1 second, would you like to speak to your second, Representative Wheeler, I believe?
Yes, I also feel that there is an extreme lack of information as regarding this legislation, both in the details that are included in the legislation and as regards any potential overlap between services that would be provided by Turbo Boat and current established student organizations and processes on campus. So I think that without that information and without someone coming before us who actually supports this legislation to be able to ask these questions of them, that we should postpone any further discussion.
This is debatable, so Representative Hamilton.
I have a question for those representatives who would be on state.
I apologize, what was that?
Those representatives who would be on state during the summer session list off the list.
Liz, I apologize, can you speak up a little bit?
Please speak louder.
Sorry about that. If we move this into a summer meeting, those representatives who won't be able to attend summer meeting because they're in a different state, they still be able to voice on this issue.
They will not be able to vote. If that helps. I mean, they can obviously email and have someone to read it off, but they can't vote. Representative Gardner?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly who to address for this, but is moving this to a summer meeting, would that very much damage the actual intent of this? I mean, is it something that's time sensitive? I mean, some of the dates that I'm seeing are for the first election of the year, June 5th. I don't know if the representative who spoke before would be qualified to answer this question, but would moving this effectively hurt this legislation in its original form? Yes.
I'll take it as a point of information. I'll answer it. Yes, basically. So the original intent was to get this service so people could register more easily for the recall election, and there's been some extreme confusion between a $5,000 startup fee and a $26,000 cost for an entire year. So it would effectively, moving this at all and not passing tonight would be effectively killing it for a little bit. But what we could do is take it up in our internal budget if we wanted to, and if I decided to do that, and coordinating council agreed and everything, we could fund them for a year come fall. We would just miss any summer election. But just to keep in mind, there are other, they can still register. I'm not saying students can't register. They just want to have just one service.
Okay, and then if I could just move
Sure.
to debate. I'm wondering if there is, because I, in general, am very confused, excuse me, about the turbo vote process, and I guess I would need a lot more information about that. However, I'm rather concerned that it would be very much altering this legislation if we move it to the summer. So I'm wondering if there's someone here that feels they are enough of a resource on the turbo vote process. I don't know if Chair Statter has been working somewhat with the representative who originally brought this up. But I don't know if someone could answer that question as far as if there is someone who could be a resource as to clarifying whether, what it is, I guess, the very specific information that would be able to, so I can make an educated decision on this. Because that's my one concern, is that you do move it, it's very much altering this legislation.
Okay. I'm sure that would be brought up in, yes, Chair Statter.
It's my understanding that yes, if we do not take this up today, that this particular service would be, will not be available to students May 5th. For the June 5th special election. I'm also uncomfortable with a little amount of information that we all have. Although I think that it's important for all of us to now to not only look at this service, but the other service that Chair brought up prior. And because it sounds like this isn't a unique service or a unique model. So I think that we can address the final issue that we're all hoping to get to, perhaps by just doing some more homework ourselves.
And then, I'm sorry to keep addressing questions to people. If a representative who was spoken of before could speak to the timeline about a service that's offered by an organization
introduction to Matt Kowalski. He's very knowledgeable about the services that Whisper provides, and he emailed me an entire thing that I could read to you, but that talks about why Whisper's service is much more customizable, is already funded by students and such. I was also just going to talk about the concerns about moving it towards the summer. I see the intent of this legislation to provide a service. Whether or not what time that service goes into effect, I don't think is the question here. I think the question is we're trying to provide a service, and I think that there are many services that are similar as concerns from members of our community have already brought up. And I think it's important for us to evaluate everything, and when the author of this legislation, I guess, I believe Max isn't here to even talk about it, I think that's a big problem. And so I understand the reason for moving it towards the summer, but I would even want to move to amend it before the fall, because a lot of members aren't going to be here, and a lot of members of the community aren't going to be here either who may provide similar services. So that's just my concerns.
Okay. Floor's open for debate. Representative Gardner.
Yeah, so I really appreciate hearing that, and I think I wouldn't necessarily be in favor of moving it to the fall, because I think that a discussion of what other groups can offer could take place in the summer. And I understand that there's concerns that not everyone will be able to be there for that discussion, but I think the members that can will be able to educate themselves on what exists, and we wouldn't necessarily, to my understanding, have to make a decision at those meetings, especially considering the constraints of funding. But I think at least having that discussion about what each process that exists has, I think overlap is a big concern that I didn't realize before. But I would not necessarily be in favor of moving to the fall. However, I do really agree that I don't feel comfortable making a decision about this today. I think there needs to be more resources available to make a decision like this, and I think postponing it to the summer is the best way of doing that, even though it does conflict somewhat with legislation. I think that's the best option that we have at this point.
Vice Chair Giannopoulos.
Move to call the question.
I'm going to call the question. Is there a second? And a second. All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Here's the chair that carries. So the question's been called. All in favor of moving old business 5, the turbo vote legislation, to the first summer meeting for discussion, please raise your placard. All opposed? We will see this June 16th. Okay. We are on to old business 6, which is the Finance Committee. Vice Chair Giannopoulos.
I move to go out of rules and assign the newly sworn-in representatives to a committee.
So, a motion to move out of rules to assign the newly sworn representatives to their committee. Is there a second? Second. All in favor of moving out? I thought I would speak your motion.
Yeah, well, we went around the room and we all said what committees we want to be on, so we should afford the same opportunity to the people who were just sworn in.
Would you like to speak your second? No. Okay. All in favor? This is debatable. I apologize. So, floor for debate. Seeing none, the question to call. All in favor of moving out of rules to swear in the new, I apologize, to have this newly sworn in representative assigned to the committee, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. So we're out of rules. All the representatives who are newly sworn in, Chris is on there, and Jeremy. Everyone needs to be on an open committee or a committee in general. So there's university affairs, diversity, ledge, ShareGov, a whole lot of great options. So just what would you like to be on? So for attendance purposes.
Can I be multiple?
Of course.
Okay. Probably diversity and rules.
Diversity and what?
And rules.
And rules. We're actually gonna get to rules. You need to be like appointed to that specifically, but we're almost there. Okay. Chris, what would you like to be appointed to? To rules as well. Okay. Rules committee does not count towards your committee appointments. So you need to be on another committee an open committee. So diversity, ShareGov, ledge, or university affairs, or us if things. So do any of those sound appealing to you? Diversity committee? Okay. Diversity committee. Okay. And I think everyone's here. Yes, everyone's here. Okay. So any motions to move back into rules?
So moved.
So moved, okay. And then did I submit a second? Second, okay. All in favor of moving back into rules, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. So we're on to old business 6. Appointment of members to the Finance Committee, and there are 2 open seats still. Vice Chair Giannopoulos.
I move to table this until the first fall meeting because that is the only time where we can appoint these people, and one of the people we want to appoint is not here.
Second.
And a second, next speech your motion?
We just did.
That works too. Would you keep your second, Representative Yusefa? Perfect. It's debatable. Representative Gardner?
It's a point of information,
On
I
point.
guess. Is there any business that finance committee members would have to perform over the summer, I guess, that would be suited?
Not that I'm aware of, but I just, no. And as long, and I assume that we will inform Jonas to read up on, you know, the duties and everything. I'm sure Chair Kidd will help him with that as well. Yes. Okay, floor's open for debate. See no debate, the question's been called. All in favor of moving the Finance Committee appointments to the first fall meeting, which is September 5th, I believe, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are so moved. We're on old business 7, the Rules Committee. Representative Nygaard.
I nominate Representative Spears.
Nomination for Representative Spears. Representative Spears, do you accept? To the Rules Committee, do you accept the appointment? Okay. Representative Yusefa.
I nominate Representative Newton.
Do you accept? The floor is over for the nominations. Floor is over for the nominations. Seeing none, the floor is closed for nominations. Okay, we're going to move to debate on these two candidates since there are more seats than there are people. Any points of debate? I apologize, what?
Point of information,
On
there
what?
are more seats than people.
Yes, there are 3 more maximum seats. With these 2, they still do 1 left for whoever else wants to be, appointed in the fall or whatever. So we're in debate. Any points of debate? Hearing none, the question's been called. All in favor of approving Representative Levenger and Representative Spears to the Rules Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Point of information.
On point.
Will the final seat be selected at our next meeting?
I mean, during the summer, it could be. It doesn't have to be filled also, so no one wants it, doesn't have to. But, so we're on to the final old business piece of legislation. It's the Student Transportation Board appointment. There are 2 seats, and this was looked into, and we are allowed to have 2 designees from the ASM Student Council, and the way that I interpret that is Student Council can approve 2 designees, which means anyone, not just representatives. So, Representative Wickvander.
I nominate Representative Hamilton.
Okay, it's been nominated for Representative Hamilton. Representative Hamilton, do you accept? Okay. Representative Nygaard.
I nominate myself.
Second.
Okay. That works. That works. And I think you accept. Okay. Other further nominations? Chair Kidd?
Since Representative Nygaard won't be a part of the council, she can still hold the seat.
Yes, that's what I was saying. The 2 designees, like appointed by student council, so anyone as a UW-Madison student, basically. Yep, no problem. Floor is open for the nominations. Floor is open for the nominations. Seeing none, there are 2 seats and 2 candidates. We'll move into debate on these 2 candidates. Representative Rowland. Can we call the question? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, question's been called. All in favor of approving Representative? There's been called unanimous consent. Any objections? Hearing none, congratulations to Representative Nygaard and Representative Hamilton. Okay. Vice Chair Giannopoulos.
Move to adjourn.
The motion to adjourn is second. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Please stay seated for roll call. And thank you very much.
Akers. Here. Babineau. Here. Pelosi.
Here.
Crandall. Gardner.
Here.
Giannopoulos. Here. Hamilton. Higgins.